guys, what's going on? It's Dan, and I am joined by Matt, Ryan, and Johnny. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing fine.
Doing
I
great.
yeah.
Well, quite well, indeed.
All right, fantastic. So I know we've had a bit of a hiatus on the content, so we've got a pretty substantial video plan for you guys today where we're going to be talking about the wild card, the playoff transactions, and the quarterfinals. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and hop into it with our wild card matches. So the first match was Dark versus the Scooch. This match, we don't know what was on Dark's team because the video of the match never occurred, and we only know what was on John's team because he posted a paste of it, and we didn't really get a paste from Dark's team. So, Johnny, why don't you break down what actually occurred in the first wildcard match?
All right. So in our first match, I barely remember what his team was too, but he brought a really strong one if I remember. But the very first match of it, I swept 4-0. I built up a lot of momentum with Kangaskhan. I think I got 4 kills with it that game or something ridiculous. And that was the big thing there, using Hitmonlee and Kangaskhan in conjunction to sweep. The second match, though, he swept me. I mispredicted one of his plays, and it swept me, and it dominoed. There we go. That's that word. And man, I mean, he got me on the second match, and he actually 4-0'd me, which was pretty hilarious. So then we got into the third match after sweeping each other. And I ended up getting the W with that because I had set up my Volcarona. So I got 4 kills with Kangaskhan and 4 kills with Volcarona. And it was a tough one because we had kind of seen each other's tricks throughout the whole entire first 2 matches of that set. So the third match was pretty neck and neck. It was kind of like a back and forth and predicting that stuff. But one of the biggest threats he brought was the Dracozolt, of course. That's always a huge one. And I had a tough time with that and a few other of his things. So, but yeah, it was a really fun match, and it was a great way to rematch Dark finally after many months.
Yeah, that does sound like a pretty interesting match. We have some notes about the match as well from our perspective. Ryan, you wanna cover these notes really quick?
Sure. Oh, that's Johnny. That's all we got.
All right. Fantastic, thank you. So in the other wildcard match, we had Jess against Dina, and this was a pretty interesting match. Matt, do you wanna talk about this, since I know you had Dina's perspective pretty close while we were looking at it? Do you wanna just give us the basic rundown of what occurred here before we go into our analysis?
Sure, yeah. So, from my perspective and kind of from hers, it just kind of seemed like Jess didn't really seem to bring really solid answers against some of Dina's common modes. It seemed to me almost like Jess was kind of predicting Dina to lead one particular thing and was trying to hard counter that, and then didn't quite get the lead matchup right, which seemed odd. I don't know exactly what she was trying to counter, but it just seemed like she didn't have the tools to really deal with what Dina was doing. Maybe in any of the 3 games here. The first one, she was relying on Rock Slide Blizzard to stop Trick Room, and considering that the Landorus was sheer force, there was no potential for flinching. So she was really just relying on damage rolls or a freeze, which is not great. She got pretty fortunate and got the freeze, and that kind of saved the game for her. So she took the first game, even though I think if that freeze doesn't happen, it's looking really, really bad for her. I think Dina probably takes it. And then game 2 and 3, Dina went with her coaching Riolu next to Cinderace mode. Game 3, she ended up pivoting from the Cinderace to the Escavalier instead. But she basically just did the same thing with that. She just kept coaching on the Escavalier in game 3. And it didn't really seem like Jess had too great of a response to either of those. I think one of the main mistakes that she made was killing the Riolu too early without actually dealing with the mon that Riolu was boosting with its coaching, because then Dina was just able to get a free switch into Clefable next to this this monstrous Dynamax threat with boosted attack and defense, and in one case Cinderace, in the other case Escavalier was just able to sweep pretty convincingly in game 2 and 3. So that was kind of the main takeaway that she and I had. It just didn't seem like Jess had prepped all that well for either of those kinds of leads.
Yeah, Ryan, why don't you give us your notes on the match as well?
I don't have a whole lot to say. So I actually, yes, you're predicating on not missing Rock Slide, but in a vacuum, the Runeriga's Clefable lead is pretty hard to stop, and I do speak from experience on that. And when I played Dina, that was a lead I had a really hard time with, and the fact that you can the Blizzard plus the Rock Slide to try to get that and get the damage roll, it's really risky, and it paid off. Because I mean, she is more likely to land that Rock Slide than miss it. So the freeze obviously was fortunate because she missed the Rock Slide, but like for me, in a perfect world, she does that lead both hit anyway, and Rune is dead, and then she's in pretty good spot regardless. So I didn't hate that, and I actually think that she took that advantage and played it really well. I liked her game 1 a lot. Okay, the Dragonite switch into the Ice Shard there, thought was pretty sus. Obviously, the Ice Shard crit, but even still, that seemed like a very risky switch to me. The Cinderace had a lot of reason to just straight up like Steel Spike into that slot that she was switching in. Like that was not a very safe proc at all. And I don't love Dragonite into that team in general. I didn't think it really was. I question how good of a max option that was into what Dina had, especially if you're worried about a potential Trick Room. I do like that she predicted a faster mode for the latter 2 games, but still a little odd. Game 3 felt very dominant on Dina's end. I actually thought the fact that she kept the Cinderace in the back and used the Escavalier as her primary mode was a really good call for a Game 3, because it let her keep that Cinderace in the back, and that felt like her win con was very well secured by having those tools where they were placed. I thought that was really good. So those are my thoughts. Dan, what do you got?
Yeah, I can agree that turn 1 freeze really felt like it kept Jess in the match. It felt like there was the potential for it to steamroll game 1. And I know what you're saying about the Rock Slide hit also potentially picking up the KO on the Runerigas, which is why I don't really love the Aguave Berry. I've never known how to pronounce that, but I didn't love that.
I'd actually like to clarify, the Rock Slide missed the Clefable, not the Runerigas.
Okay.
Oh, right. Never mind. My bad.
Yeah, but even so, I don't know if that was a damage roll or if it was EV to survive, but I would have preferred to see like a Yachi Berry in that slot, or maybe a Lum Berry to prevent this freeze if it was able to survive that. Like the Pinch Berry didn't really make a lot of sense to me as an item choice, but it didn't hurt her. Well, I mean, it hurt her game 1, but it didn't hurt her in the match too much. The Cinderace just didn't seem to have solid Cinderace answers, and I think that was sort of like she had to make plays to try to beat the Cinderace, like call out where the targets were, and if she missed one, she was going to lose that game, and that's sort of what happened in game 2. And then I'm really not sold on multi-scale weakness policy procs, just generally. I don't know if that was multi-scale Dragonite off the top of my head, but I assume it was because that crit didn't kill it. So let's assume it's multi-scale. Then you're reducing your Pokemon's ability to just reducing damage that's done on a weakness policy proc onto you, like a self proc. And I don't know. I've just never been a huge fan of that generally as a strategy. But I could see why she did it into this match as a potential solid way to fight the Cinderace. I'm just not personally a huge fan of it. But overall, I thought this was a very well played game. Very fitting of the Blue Division wildcard slot. But after that, we had our playoff quarterfinals set. In the Red Division, we had Burst playing Ryan and John playing Maxwell. And in the Good Division, we had Charles playing me and Matt played Dina. But before we did that, we had some transactions. So let's go down the list here. I will let Ryan go ahead and cover this first one, the Cradilli for Drampa.
All right, Cardilli for Drampa. John, I'll be honest. I don't know what you were thinking with this one. To me, so in a vacuum, Cardilli for Drampa to me makes a lot of sense on John's team, and I like it in that vacuum. The problem is that your opponent that you know that you have week 1 is Maxwell, and he has a Dracovish. And Cardilli, like the pressure of Cardilli, helped you win your set in the regular season. Well, not win the set, but make it very close and take a game off him. And I felt like that was still a really key component of potentially winning. So in a vacuum, even when you made this trade, I wasn't 100% on it because it felt like a Dracovish answer was being taken off the table for a TR Dragon that I wasn't 100% sure would be good into your week 1 opponent. But it might have. But as a longer term trade, I can definitely see it though. Like Drampa and to me or Burst seems pretty good. But like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was totally in a vacuum. Because after I looked at my schedule, I said, "Oh yeah, I'm up against Maxwell. My bad." So if it makes anyone feel any better, I totally blanked on that fact that I was going into that match. Because it had been a couple weeks there, But yeah, I mean, what I was thinking was I knew I really love having redirection or at least an immunity to some sort of thing. But Cradilli wasn't doing much for me. Like, I mean, yeah, I'd bring it for that pressure to absorb some water. But I really wanted to experiment with Drampa to to put on some more pressure to the opponents. But yeah, definitely that was a pretty terrible trade in my opinion. Once I looked at my first week match, again, yeah, like you said, in the long run, yeah, I mean it's great for the team. But yeah, unfortunately, my first opponent, that didn't work really well on. So at least it has Sap Sipper. Whoa, against all those grass types, man.
Hell yeah, I'm grass boys.
All right.
And the next trade?
Yeah. John, why don't you actually talk to us a little bit about what you thought about the Articuno for the Duraludon trade from Dina?
I thought that was really great because Articuno's, it's kind of tough to use, I think. It has a lot of offensive pressure, but it's kind of, one-dimensional, I think. But in terms of her next matchup, I mean, it worked out really well. Duraludon has a lot of offensive pressure, and it can have all kinds of different sets that you can run on it. I think Duraludon was an upgrade, and of course, a very stellar typing change, so.
Yeah, I personally wasn't a huge fan of the trade. Like, I understand that the Max Lightning off Duraludon not being redirected against Matt is going to be a big part of that game if that's the game plan she's going to go for. But looking forward to her future matches, like, without Articuno, her team is incredibly soft to intimidate. And I don't know. I know it was very, very, very good short term. It's sort of the opposite of your trade, where your trade was really good long term, but really weak in the short term. Her trade, I think it was a slight upgrade short term. I don't think it was a massive upgrade, but in the long term, I do think it weakened her team against prospective future opponents. But I can definitely understand why the trade was made as well.
Right.
I think it was a massive short-term upgrade. I totally get why you don't like the trade for her matchup into you. If I'm her against you and I have Duraludon instead of Articuno, I don't really know what I do, but I think she was very much aware that she had a tremendous amount of trouble against my rain mode without something like this, and especially because she didn't have the Noivern to lean on anymore.
Yeah, I'd agree. Without the Noivern, the Duraludon made a lot of sense to me. I think for the game that she had, it's fine, and there's a potential that she wouldn't even bring Articuno into Dam. So, or well, Dan.
No, there's
or
no world where
Charles.
that happens.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. But let's see. I'll take a look at this Talonflame for Togetic. I mean, we've just basically come full circle on Burst's transaction wheel. He traded the Togetic away mid-season, got widely panned for it, and then was able to pick it up in time for playoffs to basically improve his team in every way imaginable. So I thought this was a fantastic trade on his part, and I don't really think there's too much else to say about that. Would anyone else disagree that this was probably the single biggest upgrade that happened for any team in
I
this
wouldn't
transaction?
disagree with that.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fletchinger's better anyway.
And it was hard for me to deal with, too. As his week 1 opponent, Togetic gave me a lot of trouble that I wouldn't have had if he had Togetic. Talonflame was a lot easier for me to deal with.
Yeah,
so.
Togetic with Morning Sun is really good into your team. Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Blaziken Azumarill trade?
This is one that actually Ryan and I were chatting about earlier before we started recording, and I don't really think we got to finish the conversation, so I'd actually like to throw it to Ryan in a moment. But all I'll say is that I was Azumarill seems like a nice addition to the team. It's helpful with the Trick Room mode, with the Aditi and Slowking. They're kind of weak to those dark types. It can be helpful there. It's a little bit awkward doubling up on the water typing, but that's okay. It's not necessarily a big deal. I was more surprised that he was willing to drop the Blaziken for it. Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit about your thought process here?
Yeah, essentially this is sort of a long-term decision, but wasn't. Blaziken was the whole season felt very situational. And during the regular season, when I played both Burst and Maxwell and Johnny, I had no inclination to bring Blaziken to any of those. And I felt no inclination to bring it to the rematch either. So it was one of those where for the blue division, I might want Blaziken against a couple teams, but I thought that even if I don't end up bringing Azumarill against Maxwell, I still think that it demands more from Maxwell than Blaziken would have, which I think is a good thing. So that was kind of my thought process. More so just had to do with how I was feeling about Blaziken at the time, and I thought Azumarill was one of the best mons available that was available to pick up. So.
Great. So then I dropped Diglett the God for Lopunny. Ryan, why don't you just give us the TLDR on the Diglett for Lopunny?
You can't guillotine anymore, but you get a Lopunny, which is actually one of the best tier 5s. So I'll tolerate it. Not happy about it, but it's an objectively pretty good thing, just because it demands prep. You have to prep for Lopunny. You have to prep for Diglett too, because guillotine beat up stuff. But I do think this is generally a good idea going into playoffs. A little bit more diversity of options to the team. That's it.
Yeah, I didn't think it wasn't a huge trade one way or the other, but I'd agree it's a small upgrade. So, Johnny, why don't you tell us about Maxwell's failed trade Mandibuzz for Sableye and then a successful trade Mandibuzz for Vaporeon?
Wow. I mean, yeah. It almost worked out for Sableye. Sableye would have been really cool because it can do a lot of stuff. But I think Vaporeon is just a complete and utter upgrade to Mandibuzz. But that's only my personal opinion because I think I had it on my draft. You think I would know that. But I don't think I brought it to a single match. Oh, I did? Well, thank goodness. Okay, look at me not saying fibs over here. But, man, Mandibuzz is it's a good mon, but it's really niche. And that's coming from me who, does stupid stuff all the time. But, man, Mandibuzz is kind of it's got a really good ability and a pretty good defensive typing. But I think Vaporeon, with its ability water absorb and its bulk, I mean, it's been such a classic bulkster, if you will. It's kind of like a Hulkster from Hulk Hogan, but a bulkster. It's got really good bulk, and I mean, it serves a lot of good purposes, of course, with Yawn and Scald and stuff like that. I don't believe he brought it to our match, but I think as a long-term trade, that's really going to work out for him because it adds that type diversity that he needs. And I mean, I think it has less weaknesses than Mandibuzz, if I'm not mistaken. So it's definitely a good choice, I think.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting trade there. I'd agree it's probably helpful in the long term, especially because Ryan made the Azumarill trade before that, and Vaporeon just provides a good wall for a lot of the things that Azumarill can do for a potential future matchup on his side of the bracket. Matt dropped Cursula for a Hypnosis bot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
That is
Yep.
that is offensive, sir.
Okay, yes,
that is-
Crobat,
that is-
On the
Crobat
very
can
first
also
slide,
set Tailwind
there's a-
very well.
On the first slide, you'll notice there's not a picture of Crobat. I'm just saying. All right, moving on.
Okay, so then we went into the quarterfinals. The first match was Ryan versus Burst. So, Matt, why don't you go ahead and give us the breakdown of the Ryan Burst match?
Okay, so the first thing I will note here on team preview is that there seems to be a very significant trick room element to both of these teams, or at least it would appear that way on the surface. There was there was some strange stuff going on with these speeds. Let's see. So even though you would think that a Pokemon like, let's say, Rhyperior would be underspeeding some faster stuff like Azumarill and Marowak, that didn't really appear to be the case. Ryan noticed in his first matchup, I believe, that his Burst was not using Min Speed on Pokemon that you typically like to use Min Speed on, so he figured he would use stuff like Azumarill and Marowak to underspeed Burst's Trick Room ones in Trick Room, and it seemed like Burst sort of made the same weird call here, or I don't know if it was a call. I don't know if it was just kind of he was ignoring the potential Trick Room matchup, but in any case, that made Ryan's Trick Room matchup, or his call to use his Trick Room mode, a pretty good one, and that was it was a close set. It went to 3 games, but it seemed to me like a lot of Ryan's power and his ability to win this set came from the use of that Trick Room mode and his knowledge that he's going to underspeed a lot of Burstmons even when he's not really supposed to. Going into some other notes I had, the dig tech on Azumarill was pretty cool. I liked that for Max Quake, and Ryan even clicked just straight dig a couple of times. That was fun to see. Maractus, I thought, was a decent call from Burst. Like I said during the transactions, Ryan had picked up a second water type, so using that Storm Drain here against the Azumarill Slowking, considering Ryan brought both, was a pretty good call. It helped mitigate some of Ryan's power in the Trick Room mode a bit, but just wasn't really enough. I think one of the big things that also contributed to the outcome of this match was that I noticed there were several different points in the match where I felt like Burst had was making some suboptimal plays in his targeting and positioning, and in game 3 he sort of just threw away a couple of his win cons. I believe, let's see, game 1 there was a point where I think he ended up switching Maractus into the wrong slot, so a little bit of a weird positioning thing there. Game 2, there was a point at which he kind of needed to protect the Maractus to preserve it and to also keep the Storm Drain on the field to help out the Max Rhyperior. Otherwise, it would have been way too easy for Ryan to just expanding force kill the Maractus and then Max Geyser into the Rhyperior. Even if you don't think a Max Geyser is coming out, it's just way safer to protect the Maractus because it's just going to die there anyway. There's really no reason not to. I also noticed in game 1 and 2 he had targeted the Indeedee with his double dark moves instead of the Slowking. He did fix this in game 3 to be fair, but this is something that I've noticed from a bunch of players really, that people sometimes have a tendency to just target a Follow Me or Rage Powder Mon just because I don't know what the thought process exactly is. If it's just something like, oh well, it's just going to redirect anyway, so I might as well just target that. That's really something you want to avoid unless that redirector actually has something threatening that it can do to you beyond just Follow Me or Rage Powder. Because essentially what you're allowing to happen is by targeting that redirector instead of the thing next to it, you're sort of just allowing that Pokemon to click Follow Me and whatever other move it wants to click at the same time if it happens to make that call. So generally you want to force the redirection there, and it was good to see that Burst had at least had fixed that in his targeting on turn 1 of game 3. But toward the end of game 3, things got a little weird. There was a turn where Marowak and Slowking were on the field after Trick Room had just expired, and it was like the most obvious Protect Trick Room play I had ever seen in my life, and Trick Room probably went off even if Burst covered for the Trick Room Protect play because he had to maybe get a Dark Pulse flinch or a Discharge Paralysis, whatever. But that was sort of the beginning of him throwing away his win cons when he just switched one slot and targeted the Marowak Protect with the other slot. So that was kind of strange. And then he was also running Steel Roller on his Magnezone, which of course does not work when terrain is not up, and he ended up protecting Magnezone on the last turn of Misty Terrain when Steel Roller was the only thing he had left that was able to damage the Marowak at all. So he threw away his last win con there, if that was even a win con, because I don't really know how much damage Steel Roller is doing to Marowak anyway. It's a physical move.
It'd have to crit, I checked.
Even
then it doesn't get the kill every time.
Right, that's what I'm thinking. Even with a crit, I'm not sure it's getting it. I don't really know what the hell Steel Roller was doing there anyway. Magnezone has a base 70 attack and 130 special attack.
Yeah, that also meant I checked. In one of the games, he crit my Azu with a Skill Spike. And at the time, I thought it didn't matter because I was like, oh, that's a Flash Cannon one, But right. I checked, and for Steel Roller, probably the crit mattered. I actually probably lived that turn and then would have kept sweeping. He should have Max Lightning that turn. He got lucky with that crit from my HP range. Was
right. It's a very very suboptimal choice. I mean, I don't know why you would go with Steel Roller over a special Steel Attack in that slot anyway. I mean, maybe if I get that there's terrain there, but that's not a good enough reason at all. You need a consistent Steel Attack to be able to attack, stuff like Marowak and Haxorus. That's you're not going to be able to hit very well or at all with your electric attacks. So Steel Roller is not a consistent way to do that. It's given that it only works in terrain and you don't have the stats for it. So I'm not going to sugarcoat that one. That's just a bad call. But that's all I got. Dan?
Yeah, this was, like you said, the Rhyperior being faster than the Azumarill was just weird to me while watching the game. It took what could have been an advantageous positioning and turned it to an unadvantageous positioning. And, I don't know, turn 1 of game 1, Ryan, it just seemed like you had the freest Trick Room in the world. And maybe I'm misreading it, and maybe you were playing against some niche corner case, but I feel like not just taking that free Trick Room game 1 really cost you.
Oh, it cost me. At the time, I thought he might At the time, I was worried about Jellicent having Trick Room, and I thought he might just straight max the
Doubling.
Rhyperior.
Okay.
So because of those two reasons, I wasn't really sure where his mindset was at. It was more of a scout than anything to try to figure out if Jellicent had Trick Room in prison or some shit. I don't think Jellicent gets in prison, but it was a scout for Trick Room.
Yeah, it was just weird to watch, but you adjusted to that pretty well. The Azumarill Rhyperior slot fight, where each of them did 15% to one another for multiple turns in a row when they were maxed, like that is the type of content we live for in the MDL. We want the slot fights to return, absolutely. And like Matt was saying, he went into a lot of depth on it, but the end of Game 3, just the last 3 or 4 turns were very confusing to watch. Like, it was less than clean. I think Burst might have actually had a chance with clean play the last couple turns, but it was just like one bad decision, and then it tilts him a little bit into an even worse decision that really is what punishes him. And even if you don't have a great out, you still play to a 2% out if you have it, and I think that Protect especially just got rid of the 2% out. But Johnny, I see you have very detailed and advanced notes on this set, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what you thought about the set?
Well, I thought it was great how Ryan had coverage from. So you get a definition and then you just flip the words around. But no, yeah, it was a great match. Of course, I'm late to the party, so that's why I have an incomplete dot there. My bad. But yeah, the match was really interesting. And I think, again, coming from a guy that does lots of weird stuff sometimes, or I like to try out things, you'll see that in my match against Maxwell. For better or for worse, mostly for worse. But yeah, I mean, like Steel Roller and stuff, as I'm watching this match, I can kind of understand, because running Steel Roller, unfortunately, Copper Raja, it's got, it's the one that does more damage, but then it takes away its secondary ability. That does not work for Steel Roller. I mean, it was a great opportunity, but that's the type of stuff that you can do with that move. But otherwise, it's like just cleaning up the field, right? If you want to get rid of the psychic terrain, right? So you can start doing your stuff. But I mean, with Magnezone specifically, you can just use an electric type move. Now, Steel Roller is a very good Dynamax move, Max Steel Spike. But again, it only lasts for 3 turns, and then it's like, I mean, you've got an electric type option that you can hit at least one of the mons. Because Ryan, did you even have any? No, you've got a ground type, right?
I had a lightning ground user.
Oh yeah, right. So maybe that's why the Steel Roller thing comes up. But I mean, other than that, it's yeah, it was kind of a questionable choice. But I can understand that it's like you see a field setter, for the terrain, or a terrain setter, I should say, and you want to get rid of it, so you fixate on that. But so I can kind of see it. But yeah, it wasn't as optimal as it could be. And of course, with the speed tiers and stuff being kind of wonky. But yeah, it was an interesting match to watch. And but again, Ryan got the W because I think he was targeting well, and he had good coverage, and he was very cognizant of what was happening on the other side of the field. So yeah, very interesting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. But why don't we move on into the second quarterfinal matchup, Johnny, which is going to be yours against Maxwell's. I'll take this one. So I was very impressed with your Kangaskhan play. Like, there's no doubt, especially the Ice Punch tech onto it. Kangaskhan was absolutely doing it work, but after your max ended, it just felt like the damage potential of your team just fell off the face of a cliff, and you'd gotten rid of the Storm Drain user, and you also didn't bring Rillaboom, so I don't know. It just felt really weird because Dracovish just felt free into the comp that you brought, and I'm not exactly sure what it is that you brought to counter Dracovish. And I think that was sort of the big play of this game. Like, no Mantine, no Rillaboom, like those kinds of things that could actually functionally go and face down a Dracovish and eat a Fish's Rend. And I think that's something that was really missing from your team. But like I was saying, the Kangaskhan play was phenomenal. I really loved the Ice Punch, but the overall damage of your team and the lack of Dracovish answers are sort of what I think hurt you this game. But Ryan, why don't you tell us a bit of your thoughts on this match?
Yeah. So with this game, no Mantine's surprising, because earlier I was getting on John a little bit about having no Credilli. So I feel like when you're looking for your next Dracovish answer on the team, my first thought was Mantine, you know? Um, so there's that I was kind of just surprised to not see it. I also just thought it was really good into the team in general. Like it has a sky high special defense stat, which meant that even though I think Maxwell ran AV with Thunderbolt, if he didn't run something like that, then it was actually a pretty good into like Tapu Lele and stuff. The Dracovish went Burr. I really liked a lot of the tech options on the Kangaskhan, kind of like what Dan was saying. I think you had Outrage for the Max Wormwind. That was sick. I really liked that kind of stuff. I just think you didn't have the options to handle some of those threats. I feel like something like, something needed to come on the field and like immediately do damage. And a lot of the time it felt like something was coming out in the field and I knew it was going to die that turn. And I just feel like you could have kind of dipped up into your higher tiers a bit to kind of give you that, especially the Rillaboom, which I was also surprised was there. And I kind of talked about this earlier with transactions. Kind of still wish you had Credilli. I like the set a lot. I thought the Kang was really cool. The Vacuum Wave with the Hitmonlee was neat. The round was interesting. If it had gone off, I don't know how well it would have gone, but it was cool. So yeah, I mean, it was a good set. I liked it. I just feel like there were a couple mons I maybe would have switched out to kind of ensure that things go a little bit smoothly. That
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, do you have any thoughts on this match?
Yeah, I can add a little something. You guys covered most of it, but really the thing that sticks out to me more than anything in this match was just a lack of Rillaboom. I think that Rillaboom in this matchup is just an absolute must bring. I can't see a scenario where it doesn't come, and I think that's probably why that's a huge part of why John kind of struggled in this one. It's you want to at least have some kind of terrain war between the Rillaboom and the Lele instead of just giving the Lele the terrain. Especially considering you have a lot of priority with stuff like the Comfy and the Meowstic that we see here. It's great against Dracovish because it's using that priority move and it resists water, so you're not assuming you're using Grassy Glide in terrain. You're taking next to nothing from that Vicious Rend. You have super effective hits on a few other mons, Gigalith and Vaporeon in particular. You ignore Rage Powder from Tangrowth. Even some of the things that threaten the Rillaboom, like Toxtricity and Blacephalon, you've got super effective hits on those. So I think not bringing Rillaboom was probably a pretty significant mistake. Other than that, I kind of agree with you guys. The Max Kangaskhan mode just lacked the power that it needed to stand up to some of Maxwell's higher tier threats. I love the round. If John's gonna go out, I love that he went out in style. That was super cool to see in game 2. And the last thing I have is something I actually forgot to put on my notes. Really, just a quick question for John. What exactly was the rain dance for on the Meowstic?
Well, if you'd watch my video, no. But yeah, the rain dance, and I'll explain a little bit of my thought process here on all of these things. I don't mean to be like, you said this thing, so now I'm going to explain it. But no, well, specifically with the rain dance, I'll start there, is, of course, with Mind Blown. So specifically where I use that now, I really should have switched instead of doing that. But yeah, I brought the rain dance to really nullify any sort of Mind Blown, any sort of fire type attacks, and also to give an advantage to one of my mons. But it was really just to deny most of any of that stuff with the fire type attacks, because I'm really worried about the Blacephalon, which ended up doing a really good job. So that's why. And then also, if he had set any sort of weather, so he didn't bring Gigalith, but I would use Meowstic to change the weather. So if he had gone the route with Dracovish to double its speed in the sand, then I could deny that on the first turn. Even if he switched into his Gigalith, I could have predicted that. and then shut off his sand and then outsped the Dracovish. So that was the thought process there. In terms of, playing around the terrain, I know Rillaboom is a great selection in terms of terrain wars. And I didn't have any terrain on Meowstic because, of course, you can put like Misty terrain on it and stuff like that. But Rillaboom just didn't seem like a great matchup to me, especially with the Hawlucha, because it can be so fast. And then if somehow I didn't think we'd go into Trick Room, but the Toxtricity worried me. And then of course Dracovish with Ice Fang, which would have done a whole lot. So I didn't. Rillaboom's a tough one for me to use in a lot of matchups based on what I have. I know my mons were kind of wonky, my selection. But yeah, Rillaboom, instead of dealing with the terrain in terms of having that war, saying, oh, okay, I'll throw out a Rillaboom and make sure that it's slower than min speed Lele, I decided to go the other route and use priority that didn't get inhibited by the terrain. So if I use Rain Dance with Prankster, that's not blocked, right? Or if I use Helping Hand, of course, or especially with Floral Healing, that's on my own mon, so that isn't actually denied. So those are the type of thing. Now, of course, I can't use Giga Drain, but I mean, that was a sacrifice I was willing to make. So, and I mean, really my biggest answer when I had calced everything to Dracovish was to throw out this Diglett and the Drampa and then hit it with a round, which was guaranteed to always knock out because I had put a Silk Scarf on it. Now there was a risk because if it's adamant, but he's got full investment into speed, he does outspeed Diglett by 1 point, which is really astounding in a Choice Scarf, right? So that's why I had to take that risk of, is he going to be the sand variant? And that's why I would bring Meowstic, or if he's going to do that. And then I kind of actually predicted, I mean, he'll use a lot of 252 fours. It's not kind of assumed that he would be max speed, which I figured out very quickly. But that's kind of a look into that. And of course, not Mega Kangaskhan, I wish. Kangaskhan was just there to hold the team together. But yeah, it kind of peters out after its max turns, unfortunately. But that's a little look into what I was thinking. So it wasn't completely just like I threw all caution to the wind and said, oh, I like these mons and I'm going to use them. And I love round. But I am super stoked that I got a round off, and I almost pooped myself because it actually worked against Dracovish. And I mean, that was a great way to go out, and I'm not too salty that I lost real hard, but that's okay. Hope that answered everyone's questions. So there you go.
I think that definitely answered a few. But with that being said, we're going to move on to the Matt and Dina matchup. Who do I have taking this one, Ryan?
I think so, yeah. So this is pretty much the teams. I mean, you see both transactions, the Crobat and the Duraludon come in, but this is nothing you haven't seen from Matt. This is nothing you haven't seen from Dina. I don't know if she brings Sneasel too often. She brought it against me, so I guess I think it comes often. But I mean, this is pretty in line with what I would expect. I actually do quite like how both teams look into each other. It seems like there is quite a bit going on here. So that's sort of my first impressions of the matchup. Was I kind of looked at it and went, okay, yeah, this is what I would expect from these two coaches at this point. I did expect both transactions to come. The Duraludon seemed really good, and actually so did the Crobat, because Dina doesn't have a Tailwind option, because she doesn't have the Articuno or the Noivern. So I figured Crobat coming made a lot of sense, especially with something like the Diggersby. So move on to the next slide, I guess. Matt, you can fuck right off with that RNG game 1 and 3. Holy shit. Game 1, Dina still won, but it was ridiculous how close that ended up being just from the shit. Game 3, I think you had a 66% chance to win, because I'm pretty sure if you miss that Hypnosis and she lands, you lose. I did like Matt's game 2 a lot. I thought that was super cleanly played. I really liked what he did there. I like the Duraludon set to circumvent a lot of Matt's options, and we talked about that a lot earlier when we were discussing sort of the general idea of Dina picking up the Duraludon for Matt, and it really felt like it was brought for Matt. The Wide Lens Crobat was a great call. I kind of hate it was a good call, but it was. It was good, bulky too. I mean, it lived a Thunderbolt from, I think, Rotom Wash. Like, that didn't feel like a range.
Yeah.
It felt like it just lived that. And I was like, well, damn, okay. Which
Yeah.
I thought was pretty key. The fact that you didn't have to run Sash on that and you could increase the odds in your favor with the wide lens, especially for the Screech tech, felt really good. I really liked that that was sort of what you went for there. I mean, it was a good set. Game 1 made me angry. Game 2 felt very clean, and Game 3 was Matt won with a 66% hypnosis, in my opinion. I think that had that missed, and then the Diggersby died, that would have just been game. I do think Dina should have. I like how she played her late games. There was one criticism I had. I think it was Game 3, where she should have protected the Rotom and then done something else. I don't remember which turn that was, but there was like one little turn where I was like, eh. But overall, her endgame plays were very good in all 3 sets. I was really impressed with how she played out of maps, and she really, really, really played to her outs. I was really impressed by that.
Yeah, I'll hop in on this match a little bit. Look, I don't really care if it's wide lens, but as you can see in my comment, anyone using hypnosis 6 times in one match has committed a crime against God and men and has probably violated the Geneva Convention in some regard. So
I'd like to clarify. It landed 6 times. I clicked it 8 times.
Oh, well, that's so much worse. I don't see why you had the need to do that, but I'd like to apologize on behalf of everyone in the MDL for Matt's behavior. There are children who watch this video that try to learn how to play Pokemon, Matt, and this is not how you play Pokemon. Any children that are watching this, look, there's just nothing acceptable about what just happened. But beyond that, Dina Sneasel set, really cool. I liked the Scarf Icy Wind. Like, I was not a big believer in the Sneasel transaction for the flying fast dragon thing, whose name is escaping me at this time, Noivern. But I thought the Sneasel did very well. I liked that she went for the Fake Tears read in Game 3. There were a few times she didn't read a Protect that I thought seemed pretty straightforward, but otherwise I thought the game was pretty well played between both of you guys. But yeah, overall, I don't know. The wide lens hypnosis, like, as I'm watching the game, I'm just like seething. Like, I haven't been boxing in like 2.5 years. I'm like, I need to go spar someone right now. Just let me get this out of my system. So, you know, I guess it was quality television, but Dina, we are very, very sorry for you. Matt definitely needs to like bake you a cake or something, because that was disgusting. Before we pass it over to Matt to monologue about his match for a little bit, Johnny, why don't you tell us why you thought this was a cool match?
I thought it was a cool match because, I mean, there's so much, it's so dramatic. The drama, the hypnosis we've all mentioned, it really tickled my ivories, if you prefer. And it was just a great time. And man, I mean, I agree. That was the coolest Sneasel. I mean, it's just such a nice pick. I mean, again, we all know those Mons, harkening back to Pachirisu, and Diglett. You know, a week prior, whoever brought that was Matt, wasn't it? There's these Mons that just fit in perfectly, that do what you need them to do. And I mean, it was just a really nice back and forth. It's almost like these two players know each other really well. Because the whole entire time I watched the match, I had this sense that they were kind of like predicting each other and knowing what. I mean, even just from the screen, the beginning screen of the Mons that they brought, I said, okay, yeah, they know how they play, and they've got a lot of answers to each other's stuff. So, I mean, it was really exciting and very cool.
All right, Matt, I know you're dying to tell us a little bit about why you shouldn't be tarred and feathered for using hypnosis 8 times, so go ahead and try to defend the indefensible.
Oh no, I'm not going to do that. I understand that was more toxic than Toxic himself. I'm not gonna. I know it was wrong, but I would do it again in a heartbeat. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this match. I think the match kind of speaks for itself. I suppose I have a few things to note, Dan, since you had mentioned the Sneasel. I was surprised by the scarf on the Sneasel, even though maybe I shouldn't have been, because a super fast scarf thing to outspeed my rain mode is what screwed me last time, and I feel like maybe I should have been expecting it. But at least I figured out that it was scarfed pretty much immediately this time, instead of not realizing it until after the match was over. So that was nice. The outspeed on the Crobat turn 1, game 1 was rather good information. I do actually kind of like the Sneasel on her team. I think it maybe there were a few things that I think she would have been able to do with it that just never got to see the light of day. But I'll keep those under my hat for now. But yeah, I think this team that I built this week is one of my favorite teams that I've built this season. I think it's just I had a tremendous. The whole squad has a tremendous amount of synergy. There's 3 flying types, one of which has Inner Focus and Tailwind next to a powerful Earthquake user. I had Crobat with the fast Rain Dance to protect the Celesteela and also set up rain so Raichu can hit its thunders. I had Drizzle with Scarf Soak also for thunder, and also because Ludicolo was kind of slow and Pelipper could soak things and into like a max overgrowth or something. I'm a little bit disappointed that I didn't get to use that rain mode, because it was pretty cool. But yeah, the hypnosis thing was not a super last minute decision, but it was one of the last things I actually landed on. I really like the idea of using Tailwind and Screech on the Crobat, and I figured Wide Lens would be really nice. It gives it a really nice accuracy instead of constantly worrying about 85% accuracy. We all know that we all know about muddy water misses. Those are not fun, but it's actually pretty reliable with the Wide Lens. And then I was looking for other stuff to put on it, and I was considering a couple of options, and then I was like, you know what? If I lose, at least I'll go out in style with Hypnosis. Maybe not so much style, but maybe a little bit of toxicity. But those two can overlap. So I had fun with it. Really liked the team. Dina had a really strong run. Very close match. Very really good match. I thought deserving of playoffs. I think maybe aside from the Hypnosis stuff, but yeah, good match.
Good is an interesting term to use there, but
yeah, I would agree. I think
Same.
I thought it was good.
I mean,
I thought it was cool.
I was going to give me a
think
heart
degenerate.
palpitation. Yeah, degenerate is correct.
Okay,
But
yeah.
moving on, we've got our last match of the week, which was me versus Charles. Let's see who's up to cover this one. John, you wanna give us the quick breakdown of this match?
Yeah. So there's a lot of good things going on here. We see the Leafeon, which is really just the world champion, really. And there's a lot of good stuff going on here, a lot of good defenses. I always like seeing the Gastrodon, of course, for Primarina, which is such a huge threat. And I mean, we've got Redirection on Dan's side and Thunderous, of course, which is, Tornadus, which is always a big thing. But yeah, it's a really even matchup. The Heracross, I see why it's there, because the Psychic type and the Grass type. But it is kind of a tough sell from what, I saw the match. But it looks like it's fairly even, from the beginning here. Obviously, a trick mode maybe on Charles's end, on C-Rad's end. And, I mean, it's, it was a pretty interesting match to watch. Yeah, it wasn't completely, one-sided, I believe. But, so I forgot that Charles, of course, and his name's C-Rad in the chat. I know you all by your names, like Dan the Man, 15 and Matt and Piano Guy. Like, I barely know sometimes I forget your first names because we all just have these things. My last name really isn't Scooch, just to clear the air on that. But yeah, it was a really interesting match between the two of those, and I really, really, really liked the Leafeon. I mean, it's such a versatile mod. So, Ryan, what do you have to say about this match?
Yeah, apparently a lot. So I really liked the Leafeon here a lot. I thought the Leafeon was a really, really smart bring, and he played it so well. I mean, it's such a situational mon, and it's really difficult to get Leafeon going well. And Charles really nailed it. I thought it was a super smart play. I really like the Azelf set that Dan brought a lot with the Drain Punch, Play Rough Tack. Like, it just hit everything, and I thought it was a really good game one kind of option because it just covered so much in one slot. Like, it felt like Dan always had an option regardless of lead with the Azelf, and I feel like that kept Charles guessing from minute one, which is a good thing. Prim is just very scary, guys. Primarina is just a scary mon. I think the game two, I talked about this a bit in match talk as well, but the game two double protect from Dan really did seal that game. Charles had counterplay to it to fake out and max lightning the slot with the torn. But that's a difficult read to make. I think it was the correct read, but it's a difficult one to make. And I understand that if Dan just attacks and you leave that alone, then you're at a super big disadvantage. So that was a tricky turn. But I do think Dan's double protect there really helps seal it because Charles didn't target down that torn. I really would have liked another item on the cross, whether it be Focus Sash, Choice Scarf, or even like a Koba Berry or something, and then a Max Heracross. Because I actually looked at game one, and my first thought was, or Safety Goggles, and I just saw game one, and I was like, oh wow, he could like Max Heracross here and get a big Max Flutterby off, and like maybe take out this Tangela, and then threaten the Azelf and lower its special attack if it's a special attacking variant. Like, he didn't do that, and I think what he ultimately went for with the Leafeon was way better than what I'm suggesting, but I do think a different item on the Heracross should have been considered. More of just a question to posit was, did a lack of a transaction hurt Charles? Because I didn't feel like this matchup was very in his favor, and Charles is the only playoffs coach who did not opt to make a transaction, and I do wonder if that would have perhaps been preferable to make one. One mon that really stuck out to me that looked good in a vacuum was Jolteon was on the table. And you could have traded like a tier 3 for that, and I think that would have potentially been good. Again, I'm just speculating, but I think it's a question worth asking because it felt like a really tough matchup for him, and I wonder if maybe he should have taken a transaction. This was a really well played game by both. I really liked it a lot. It was actually my favorite set of the playoff sets that we just covered, the 4 of those games. I liked this one the most. I thought it had some of my favorite back and forth, and I really liked what they both brought. I thought it was really, really cleanly played. Matt?
Yeah, I don't have too much to say beyond what you guys mentioned already. I agree. Leafeon usage was very good, especially in game one. It's really fun to see. Used it really well. Not going to go too deep into that since you guys already talked about it a bit. The Heracross set, like Ryan said, not really a fan. A Scarf or a Focus Sash would have made it quite a bit better. I understand you wanted the Sash on light part, and that's fair. And even a Focus Sash or even a Choice Scarf is maybe a little bit questionable. You could still get faked out. It's not as awesome as Sock with the inner focus there. But I understood what the Heracross is going for with the self proc weakness policy stuff with the brutal swing and coaching onto physical attacker like Leafeon. I just think it wasn't really equipped to do that job well enough, especially with the item that it had there. It ended up having an adrenaline orb. Is that right?
Yes, I believe that was correct.
Yeah, it's just a little bit too situational. Really relies on Dan using one of his intimidators to give you that speed boost. Would have liked to see a Scarf there. But anyway, last but not least, I really like the way that Dan played the set. especially in game one. I feel like it was very well navigated by him after being put in a bad position by that Leafeon. I think you were able to finagle your way into a winning position very well. So kudos for that.
Yeah, game one specifically, I just assumed that the Liepard had to have Sunny Day because Leafeon was on the team, and I played the entire game with that assumption, so I didn't think it could actually damage me, so I just attacked around it at the end. If it had foul play or even something like Snarl, I was going to lose that game, so that was the out that I decided to play for, and it ended up being correct. I did think it was a very good set. I really wasn't expecting the Leafeon much because I don't know, Leafeon just feels like it hard loses to Arcanine, and I've brought Arcanine every week but like 1 or 2 this season, so I don't know. I wasn't expecting the Leafeon, and the way that he used it was very effective, but I do agree that Heracross set is probably what cost him, because if I'm not intimidating it for that Adrenaline Orb to trigger, then he's not having a great time with it. But that's just about going to wrap it up for us. Looking forward, we've got the semifinals next week with Orion playing Maxwell, and Matt and I will be having our rematch. Before we sign off, Johnny, do you have a joke for us this week?
I do, yeah. And I've waited many weeks to tell a joke about a Chatot on a cruise ship. But unfortunately, one of my favorite comedians passed away today. Norm Macdonald. So I came up with another joke inspired by him. And I'll go ahead and tell that now. It's a Venomoth flies into a podiatrist, right? And he says to the podiatrist, he says, "Hi, man, I've been feeling terrible lately for the last couple weeks. I mean, it's just been a really, really terrible time for me. I wake up every morning and I look over at my old lady, and it's like there's a stranger in the bed with me, and just I'm at this dead-end job. My trainer will send me out and I'll get hit by a hypnosis. 66%, man, and I'll be getting hit by fissures left and right, by Diglets, and, I keep getting burned by thunderbolts and flamethrowers, and my trainer just wants to put me in the box all the time. And man, my son, I don't even see him anymore. He went off with another trainer, and they're playing Pokemon Go, and he's on Team Valor for some. Oh my God, he's just going on and talking about all these troubles he's having. His back hurts and blah blah blah. And the podiatrist says, "Man, that sounds really terrible, and I'm so sorry that's happening to you, Venomoth. But it sounds like you need a psychiatrist instead of a podiatrist. Why did you come here?" And Venomoth says, "Well, the light was on."
Boo.
I hate that you told that joke to me for the 3rd time in like 2 months. This time with the damn Venomoth.
Yeah, I know, isn't that great? But yeah, so that's in honor of. Sorry, Ryan's had to sit through my jokes, unfortunately. But that is in memorial or in commemoration, I guess, of Norm Macdonald, a great comedian who passed away today at 61. But in any case, any final thoughts about this is that, man, semifinals is going to be rocking, folks, and I really can't wait. So I'm really looking forward to it. Do you have any closing thoughts, Ryan, since I just maimed you with my words?
I really like Norm Macdonald. He's a good guy. I mean, we're looking forward to it. I know this crew was a little bit odder, but scheduling was weird and difficult, and we kind of just were like, hey, who can do this? So, and I helped organize this, so thank you all for coming on. And we'll see you hopefully next week with semifinal coverage. So, peace out.
All right, see you guys. Bye.